where he is a clinical pharmacy specialist in behavioral health. He is a board-certified psychiatric pharmacist, and he has been board-certified since 2001. And in addition to recently being a clinical instructor with the Quillen College of Medicine here at East Tennessee State University in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences, he's also a clinical preceptor for the Bill Gatton College of Pharmacy here at East Tennessee State University. So very involved with teaching, and I'm very much looking forward to this presentation. Thanks for talking with us today.
Thank you, Dr. Hopkins. A couple of topics today. I think they're kind of fun topics. One is a bit esoteric. The other is possibly more practical, having to do with money. And let's see, the disclosure. Nobody has paid me anything or has promised to pay me anything related to anything I'm going to talk about today. So it's all free. That's what it is. Sodium benzoate. Some time ago, we had a patient admitted to Woodridge, and they had an order for sodium benzoate, 500 milligrams orally 3 times a day. And I thought, what is that? So we looked it up and looked on my can of Coca-Cola, and it had sodium benzoate. Wonder, are they treating me for psychosis? The fig Newtons I had the other day also had sodium benzoate in it. And I thought, that's why I feel better after eating the fig Newtons. But it probably wasn't enough. So anyway, sodium benzoate. What is that good for? Let's see what the next slide has. Okay. Yeah, let me back up. Looking at psychosis and the treatments we have for schizophrenia, all of our antipsychotics, in one way or another, are D2 antagonists, work on antagonizing dopamine. And so that has been our model for treating schizophrenia for several decades now. So looking at the pathophysiology behind schizophrenia, it looks like that maybe dopamine is not the primary culprit, possibly. And as part of that, as we model schizophrenia, you can recreate positive symptoms with the D2 agonists, with the amphetamines, etc. But you don't get the negative symptoms and the cognitive symptoms. However, if you use an MDA antagonist, decreasing function at the NMDA receptor, then you do create positive symptoms, negative symptoms, and cognitive symptoms. So that, and a few other lines of evidence, lead us to say there's something going on with this receptor that may be contributing to schizophrenia. And so, sort of leading down the path where we're going today, how can we improve function at the NMDA receptor? Now, the NMDA receptor requires both glutamate and a coagonist for the receptor site to open. And so one of the things that has been observed is that in schizophrenia, the D-amino acid oxidase is a little bit overexpressed and a little bit overactive in schizophrenia. So perhaps there's a relative insufficiency of the some of the coagonists, glycine, D-serine, D-alanine. And thinking about it like an MAOI, for example, monoamine oxidase inhibitor, and the way we use that in treating depression, this is similar, though not exactly the same, but somewhat similar, and maybe if we antagonize, inhibit the D-amino acid oxidase, then we can increase the coagonist and increase function at the NMDA receptor. So that's where sodium benzoate comes in. And we'll be looking primarily at this one study done by Lane and his associates. This was a study done in Taiwan at 2 centers there. There were 52. See, this is not our typical patient, but these were stable and healthy, DSM-4 diagnosis of schizophrenia, PANS minimum 60, no medication changes, pretty stable patients, but still with who were symptomatic, which you would expect with a PANS minimum of 60. The exclusion criteria, I like that. Well, no, that's something else. Which kind of the things you would expect in a study of this nature. No surprises there. Looking at the measures, what the structure of the study, they gave the patients, they were on whatever antipsychotic they were on. They were on, among the patients, there were 9 different antipsychotics being used. What they did was they took basically half, said you just keep on keeping on, and the other you keep on keeping on, and we will add 500 milligrams of sodium benzoate twice a day. So that was the intervention. Putting that dose in perspective, the World Health Organization, looking at sodium benzoate as a food additive, they say it's okay to use about 5 milligrams per kilo per day. So for a 100-kilo person, that would be about 500 milligrams. So our dosing is above that. There is a product called Aminol, which is used for hyperammonemia and its associated encephalopathy that's due to, it's used in the context of urea cycle disorders. And sodium benzoate is one of the ingredients of that product, and for a typically sized person, they may get 9 grams a day. So our dose of 1 gram a day is well below that. So that's kind of to put it in context. So PANS, looking at, we have some effect sizes listed here, and these are pretty robust effect sizes. And at first glance, you say, wow, that's great, we need to do that. It's just, wonderful. As we go through and look at it, perhaps our enthusiasm will be tempered just a little bit by looking at the study a little more. So we see some significant differences there. Y'all can read. I don't need to read all that stuff to you. And more measures from the PANS. Again, with significant effect sizes. In parentheses, these are standard deviations, and all of these differences are statistically significant with a p-value of less than 0.001. More clinical measures from the SANS, the GAF, still with robust effect sizes. Quality of life scale, CGI, still see some significant differences there. Just looking at this makes one pretty enthusiastic about sodium benzoate as a therapy. And the HAM-D, basically these folks were not depressed. I guess the sodium benzoate made them much more chipper or happy or something. I don't know. So looking at the cognitive measures, which is something that we really would like to improve, because our current therapies really don't help cognitive symptoms. Our medications don't. So these are more moderate effect sizes, but still they do seem to have an effect. And breaking out, there were 52 patients total. There were 9 different antipsychotics being used. Most of them were not randomized equally. These were the only 2 antipsychotics that were randomized, I believe, appropriately for us to even look at to see what difference there is. Risperidone and, in parentheses, those are the number of patients. So there were 13 patients taking risperidone, 6 of whom had benzoic acid or sodium benzoate added on. Their PANSS score dropped somewhat. Haloperidol, there were 18 patients total, and it looks like that the PANSS made some difference there. So one would think, just looking at this, it raises to me more questions than answers. Is one, are we looking at a real clinical significant difference? And 2, does it matter which antipsychotic it is? Does sodium benzoate make a difference with one antipsychotic and not so much with another? All right, back to the whole group. Out of the 52 patients, we had treatment emergent adverse effects. Now, not including EPS. There was no difference in EPS between the patients treated with sodium benzoate and the treated patients in the control group. So there was no difference there. And if you look at the placebo group, which means they were still on their antipsychotic, but placebo of the sodium benzoate, it looks like what you would expect from somebody on antipsychotics. I was a little surprised to see that the benzoate group did not have the same treatment emergent side effects, which again brings up question of, is this simply observation? A group of 52 with 9 different antipsychotics doesn't give you a whole lot of power to figure these things out. Or does the sodium benzoate actually improve symptoms on its own, or is it attenuating some of the negative effects of the antipsychotics? So a few unanswered questions there. So if you were hoping that I would give you wonderful answers, sorry, that's probably some other time. Today, it's just more questions at this point. So, the results. Overall, there was a 21% improvement in PANSS, which might be okay. There was some improvement in neurocognitive subtests, and it was well tolerated without significant adverse effects. And that's something that I look at. When we're using something that's new and different and odd and strange, what bad thing is it going to do? And apparently it didn't do anything bad. Not that was particularly significant. Some conclusions. Sodium benzoate is relatively safe. In fact, many of us may have ingested some this morning so far. Since it's a very common food additive, very common. Read your labels, and you'd be surprised at what you're eating. May improve some symptoms in some patients, and as with almost every study, it requires further study. So that's sodium benzoate. Shifting gears to something that we use a lot, long-acting injectable antipsychotics. Now, long-acting is the problem. Here's the problem. Usually this is stated differently. It's usually stated like 40% non-adherence. But I'm going to try to be positive with this and say maybe 50-60% of our patients take their medicine more or less like they're supposed to. And putting this in context, in I think the January 8th issue of New England Journal of Medicine, there was a piece that talked about patients taking their cardiovascular medications, particularly after an MI. And they estimated that people took their medicine about 50% of the time. So our population is not special in that way. So most people don't take their medicine apparently, or at least half of everybody doesn't. So that's the problem. To get the medicine to work, people have to take it. And so we have the proposed solution of long-acting injectable antipsychotics. And this is what we have currently available in the U.S. And so we say, oh, okay, they're not taking the medicine, give them a shot once a month and all will be well. We would like that. And so there's a difference in cost among these. The haloperidol and the prolixin decanoate, those are less expensive than the others, and I'll get into that a little bit more. And as you might suspect, there's another study we're going to review, and it's looking at a head-to-head comparison with appropriate dosing of these two long-acting injectable antipsychotics. Now, this is an NIMH-funded study. It's not an industry-funded study, and which can make a significant difference in the way it's structured and the interpretation of results. And here it is. It's the effectiveness of Invega Sustenna versus Haldol decanoate. And I thought this was just a fun thing. They called it the Acclaims trial. This was conducted in the U.S., 22 sites. They had hoped to enroll well over 300 patients, but apparently ran out of funding or something before that. So they did get enough to have 290 in their primary analysis, which is decent size, I think. So, patient characteristics. Adults, schizophrenia. This looks like some of the people we know. And the exclusion criteria, this one, I like this exclusion criteria, is stable and doing well. So I like that. This is people we know. And so we can maybe use this. So we intervened, got these people, and what they did was they started out with a oral lead-in, which is a good practice typically, and they gave them 2 milligrams a day of either haloperidol or risperidone. As you know, paliperidone is major active metabolite of risperidone, doing the same thing in pretty much the same way, very, very similar, so that they're almost indistinguishable. So 2 milligrams a day with either haloperidol or risperidone, and then increase to 4 milligrams a day. Then as they switch over to the long-acting injectable, this is, you would recognize as the standard recommendation for initiating paliperidone palmitate therapy, as recommended in the package insert. And the haloperidol was dosed on the same day schedule, and I guess as part of the blinding process to be sure that there was no bias introduced because of different dosing, daily dosing times. So it took a little longer to get to the target dose. The target monthly dose was 50 milligrams a day, but was adjusted. All of these doses were adjusted based on patient response over the course of the trial. The trial lasted 2 years. Some patients did not, the trial ended before some of the patients completed their 2 years, but they did complete at least 1 year. And ended up with the paliperidone dose was in the 129 to 169 milligram a month range, which is consistent with local experience. So most of the patients did not remain on the 117 milligram a month dosing, but the dose had to be increased. And the haloperidol mean monthly dose was in the 67 to 83 milligram range, which you may recognize is a rather modest dose. We often will use doses quite a bit higher than that. Now, I'll take a moment to point out the difference in cost here. At the paliperidone mean monthly dose, sort of in the middle of that range is the 156 milligram dose of Invega Sustenna, and that wholesales for about $1,100 a month. In the haloperidol dose, if you say 75 milligrams is kind of in the middle of that dosing range. If you use a multi-dose haloperidol vial, that's going to be, the wholesale cost is going to be about $30 a month. So that's real dollars what it takes to buy the stuff. The difference between about $30 and a little over $1,100. Now, what's significant, you know, and we say, oh, that the insurance will pay for it, whatever. And sometimes that is the case, but our experience at Woodridge is our utilization review people sometimes have some significant challenges getting funding for patients' medications after discharge. And they never have a problem with the Haldol. But sometimes they will have issues getting the paliperidone. And some patients just can't get it. So on a real practical level, that can be significant. All right. Loading. I might point out that loading paliperidone, the two doses of 234 milligram plus the 156 milligram dosing, the loading dose, that two-dose loading dose, wholesales for almost $3,000 to get a person started on this medication. And the Haldol again would be in the, $30, $40 range. All right. So, what's the difference in these two medications? These authors found that there was no statistically significant difference in efficacy failure. And efficacy failure was defined as either a psychiatric hospital admission or the clinician saying, I don't think this stuff is working. Let's do something else. That's how efficacy failure was defined. So they came out just about the same. So we think, okay, one of them will have worse side effects than the other. Okay, let's see what that did. Well, weight gain. We're always concerned about weight gain with antipsychotics. The paliperidone group gained, on average, a little over 5 pounds. The haloperidol group lost a couple pounds. So that If you're average, I guess that wouldn't make any difference, but very, very few people I've noticed are average. And some secondary outcomes, and I don't think this is a surprise because we're quite familiar with risperidone and paliperidone increasing prolactin. And whether the prolactin level is, the increased prolactin is significant varies from person to person. There's always the issue of in males, gynecomastia and sexual dysfunction in both sexes, and I think at this point, unanswered question of osteoporosis. So anyway, there's that one. And they found no difference no statistically significant difference in all of these measures either. Looking at treatment discontinuation due to neurologic events. And this is number of patients out of the total of 290. So 3 out of the paliperidone group had to stop due to these events, and looks like 9 out of the haloperidol group had to stop because of these events. And since you're familiar with these medications, I don't think these kind of side effects are anything unusual. There's a numerical difference, but it did not rise to statistical significance. So, concluding here, there's no statistical significant difference in efficacy as determined by this study over the number of 290 patients. The paliperidone group had more weight gain, a little more weight gain, quite a bit more increase in prolactin level. And the haloperidol group experienced more akathisia. And the blank slide must mean that's the end. So, that was faster than I thought. Yes, ma'am. The question was about Abilify Maintainer, and it is not. It costs at wholesale. I didn't look up the numbers recently, but it's a little less than the Invega Sustenna, cost-wise. As far as efficacy, I'm not aware of any head-to-head comparisons. So I can't make that comparison. Invega Sustenna and Risperidol Consta, on a monthly basis, they are the same. Risperidol Consta costs half as much as Invega Sustenna, but it's given twice as often. So cost on a monthly basis is a wash. And found that to be very interesting that insurance companies will not pay for, sometimes will not pay for Invega Sustenna, but they will pay for Risperidol Consta when the monthly cost is the same. Yes, sir. They said that they watched closely for adherence, but it was not more specific than that. So, absolutely.
I also wondered about the paliperidone study in terms of the definition of efficacy would be terribly sensitive to define efficacy as lack of positive
I agree, but that was their measure. So, as with any study, I think it raises a lot of questions. It was the lack of efficacy was pretty subjective. It was not an objective measure, other than, oh, you're in the hospital or you're not, kind of thing. So.
But that was 50%. That's huge.
Well,
They were already failing.
no, which,
In the last study.
yeah, everybody was in the comparison of haloperidol and Invega. Yes, everybody was a treatment failure to start with.
All of them remain treatment.
Right. Which brings us to when people fail treatment, it's difficult to treat. So, yes, sir.
If I worked for Johnson & Johnson, I would say the risk of a neurological side effect like tardive dyskinesia is 4 times higher based on care.
Yes, I would too.
So that, to me, you said it wasn't statistically significant, but if I were a patient,
Yeah.
if I'm a patient, I'm looking at the risk.
I
Want the one with low risk.
agree with you. Yes,
Considering the nasty consequences.
indeed. Yes. That's why it's good to look at the numbers of events as well as and the patient and in context. And statistical significance does not necessarily mean clinical significance. So that's I agree. If I were
Wealthy, if you didn't care about the cost, I would definitely go with
absolutely, and if I were selling paliperidone, I would say exactly what you said. Looky here, 1 and here's 4. Do you want to be one of those 4, or one is a lower? Sorry. Yes. Typically, the question was, don't you need a longer period of time to see tardive dyskinesia emerge? Typically, yes. This study was this one was the 2 years. And not all the patients completed 2 years. There was sort of 2 waves. One group completed 2 years, another group was completed 1 year. And so 2 years is kind of a short horizon for tardive dyskinesia. So it can appear sooner.
I had a question about that too, because the extrapyramidal syndrome is not tardive dyskinesia.
Right,
And you don't know about tardive dyskinesia until you discontinue the drug.
right.
And yet they included Parkinsonism, presumably they meant, and tardive dyskinesia as an outcome.
Right.
They know about tardive dyskinesia.
They did Ames testing on these patients. Let's see, which one was it? Doesn't Ames measure?
Tardive is later.
Yes,
It
yes,
continues beyond discontinuation.
right.
But they weren't discontinued.
They were not discontinued.
So you didn't know whether it was tardive dyskinesia or extrapyramidal.
That would make it very difficult. And I don't have an answer for that. Yeah.
Argument, if a patient experiences EPS or treatment, they're twice as likely to develop tardive dyskinesia.
Yes. Yes. Picking out tardive dyskinesia while the patient is continuing their antipsychotic is a questionable at best, as you point out. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Right. In the group of the patients with the paliperidone and the haloperidol, nobody developed NMS. All right. Anything else? All right. Thank you.
Dr. Ingram, thanks so much for speaking with us today. We really appreciate your time.